The day is December 7th, 1941. It is a Sunday morning. Most sailors are still asleep. The location is Honolulu, Hawaii. And where we are at now is a naval base. This is possibly the most famous naval base in U.S. history. It is called Pearl Harbor. What we are about to see is something that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt later went on to call a day which will forever live in infamy. Japan, a country firmly aligned with the Axis powers, under the leadership and command of the dictator Hirohito, launched a surprise attack on the United States and bombed one of their most prominent naval bases.
This attack, led by Japanese Captain Masuto Fuchida, commenced due to the fact that the U.S. had ceased trade with the Japanese. The Japanese depended on commerce with the United States as their main source of oil. Now, they didn't have one. In order to fill the U.S.-sized void, Japan tried to conquer the Dutch East Indies so they could have a new oil source. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a warning shot sent by the Japanese to the U.S., telling them not to interfere with the battles in the Dutch East Indies. This proved to be one of the gravest mistakes in Japanese history. Promptly after the surprise attack, the U.S. formally entered World War II and joined the Allies.
After the events of Pearl Harbor, Congress came together to decide a vote, and there was only one person against joining the war. The congressperson who voted against it was from Montana, Jeannette Rankin. The reason she gave the press for not joining the war was that she was a woman, and she herself could not join the war and fight for her country, so why should she send others to fight a war she could not participate in?
The cultural effects of Pearl Harbor were profound, and went on to define the United States for many years to come. Although Pearl Harbor galvanized public support for going to war against Japan, it also led to the internment of innocent Japanese citizens and undermined the U.S. government's credibility.
In a weird, twisted way, Pearl Harbor united people. Before December 7th, 1941, 88% of Americans greatly opposed joining World War II. That very much changed after Pearl Harbor. For the first time since the Great Depression, people were united.
There was now a common goal amongst the masses. The U.S. needed resources to win this battle, so the United States citizens went to work.
Action was taken by everyone. People started to get involved any way they could. Kids started gathering scrap metal. Detroit, the automotive capital of the world, stopped making new cars just so that they could donate scrap metal.
The number of people that joined the armed forces on December 9th and 10th, it's just inconceivable. If you look at listing numbers, it really is incredible.
History has shown time and time again that tragedies have united people. That couldn't be truer in this case.
The longest speaker in the House of Representatives history was a man named Sam Rayburn. He was quoting saying, if anything, joining the war would unite people. That definitely happened.
Amongst the rise in patriotism, something ugly followed. That was prejudice.
In a knee-jerk reaction type move, FDR signed off on Executive Order 9066.
Executive Order 9066 put in place one of the darkest chapters in U.S. history. That is the time of Japanese internment camps.
So following December 7th, Decorated Lieutenant General John DeWitt thought that the Japanese should be controlled to prevent another attack like Pearl Harbor.
What pretty much followed has been one of the most atrocious violations of American rights in the 20th century.
If you were 1/16th Japanese, you were to be relocated. Japanese Americans had 6 days to get their affairs in order, and they could only bring what they could carry. Anything they couldn't was thrown away.
And the most haunting thing about this situation is that only 10 US governors voiced opposition. And the only reason they were afraid was because they feared that the relocated Japanese would never leave their state and possibly cause an overpopulation.
Over 117,000 Japanese Americans were relocated to military zones in California, Washington, and Oregon. Only 15,000 relocated willingly.
This was not okay.
The cultural effects were not finished. Soon after December 7th, rumors spread wondering whether President Roosevelt knew an attack on Pearl Harbor was coming and did nothing about it.
Navy sailor Robert Stinnett has developed a thought-provoking theory. He claims that Roosevelt's intentions for creating a base in Pearl Harbor was to provoke the Japanese into making an act of war, thus giving the U.S. reason to enter the war. Later on, Stinnett elaborated even more on his theory in a book called A Day of Deceit: The Truth About FDR and Pearl Harbor. I recommend you check it out. It's a very fascinating read.
While Stinnett's theory has little evidence to corroborate it, something even more damning towards FDR came out later.
3 days before the attacks, FDR received a 20-page memo that has since been declassified and can be read by the public almost anywhere. The memo says this, and I quote, "In anticipation of open conflict with this country, Japan is vigorously utilizing every available agency to secure military, naval, and commercial information, paying particular attention to the areas of the West Coast, Panama, and the territory of Hawaii."
Although FDR received this document before December 7th, no precautions were made in defense. Rumors spread throughout the U.S. about Roosevelt's inaction during the Pearl Harbor attacks and caused distrust in the government that was seen for many years down the line. Pearl Harbor triggered several impacts throughout America, some good, others bad. Regardless, it can be seen as a defining moment in American history due to the several cultural effects it implemented on citizens and can still be felt to this day.